I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. The Christopher Gregor case is one that I followed very closely. And really, as the trial unfolded, there was more and more information that came forward. There is a old podcast that Brianna Micciolo did where she talks about her experience and her story. I have not been able to watch every single impact statement. I did start seeing Christopher Gregor, him giving his thoughts, and I have some thoughts. Please prepare yourself because the details of this case are very triggering. If this is too much for today, please join me on another video because this one is a tough one and the emotions are going to run very, very strong. I'm also going to play the impact statements of Corey's family. Corey is Christopher Gregor's son. He was 6 years old at the time that he and Christopher Gregor has been found guilty of manslaughter and aggravated child. And there's a word that I can't say this earlier in the video or YouTube will get mad. So sometimes I will talk around some videos. Thank you all for joining. I have until 4 p.m. So I will have to skip forward a little bit, but I'm so glad to get to join you all for this. And so I've really tried to provide I can't say balance because from the start, based on the details, and I did watch the treadmill video, and this case from the start, I was not a fan at all, and I've definitely had some feelings, and so welcome, welcome. Let's go on ahead and hear his statement. Please breathe, okay? And I'm going to interrupt. If you would like to see the video without interruptions, I have the full link down in the description. All right, let's get started with this.
Please go ahead. Just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And Brianna, we haven't talked since Corey passed away. With everything that has been said, I just want to tell you that I'm sorry that you lost Corey.
This man had the nerve to say, "I'm sorry you lost Corey," to Brianna, to Corey's mother. Like, why would you? I don't understand that. I don't understand that. And a lot of his statement, to me, it's going to be a lot of about himself. Okay. It's going to be a lot about him and his thoughts. If I was the judge, this would not make me go more lenient on a person. This was painful to listen to, but we're going to do it together.
He was, to say simply, the best.
And I don't know who's crying. I wonder if anybody had to leave, if anybody just was not able to sit and hear this. I do not know Corey, and it was difficult for me to listen to this.
I know we'll miss him for the rest of our lives. And the 2 years that I knew Corey were very difficult, but they were the greatest years of my life.
He was the one who would not tell the hospital, would not allow the hospital to call Brianna, the mother. He was the one who left. Like, Corey is dying and he gets in his car and drives away. The prosecution's going to bring up the fact his son has vomited and has had all these things happen, and he takes a picture and orders food and sends it to a girl. This is painful.
And he was a happy, energetic, loving, radiant young boy who flourished in his life in all aspects the last year of his life. And
I feel like he thinks he flourished because of him, that because he came into his life, that's why he did so well. And it's like, Oh, it's so that's why, please, y'all prepare.
Sorry. That would be how I remember him. And Corey, wherever you are, I just want to say that I'm proud of you. Everything that you did.
I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. Like that's this may be the worst statement I've heard in a very, very long time. This is problematic for me personally. Uh,
The last months of his life, us three, Brianna, Corey, and me, we spent more time together than apart. All those hikes and walks, trips to the beach, time spent playing football and all the other sports, going to Sky Zone, the park, the playground, sledding, and all of that, I saw how much Brianna loved Corey, how much he loved her, and how well we could co-parent together.
I don't think they co-parented well. I thought he was the one who was being demanding about her bringing him back. She was the one who was calling child services over and over because of alleged abuse to Corey. Like I just I this I don't know what okay. Okay. Mm.
Those memories and all the good times, they'll be what I remember, and they helped me get through the tough days. And I hope that they can help you too, Brianna.
He needs to say nothing to Brianna right now. Absolutely nothing.
I'm sorry you believe I could have done this to our son, and it pains me.
I'm sorry you believe I could have done this to our child. He's been found guilty of manslaughter. Like, I just can't. Mark heckling was rough. Oh, okay. So I haven't got to that part yet, I don't think. Like, this is not good. It's not good for to me. And the judge is, I think, limited with the law. And that's what right before I got on, because the judge was still finishing up the sentence. We are maybe about an hour behind on the court. And please don't spoil it in the chat. I want to hear it here first.
It pains me to know that you view my actions those months together as ingenuine. That I could have hurt the most important person in my
You
life.
did. We saw it on video, sir. You did. You did the thing.
What happened on March 20th was inexcusable.
Yeah.
To you, Brianna, your family, and mine, I want to apologize that you had to see Corey treated that way.
So he apologized that we had to see him treated that way, but he did not apologize for what he did to his son. I can't. Like, this is not an apology. This is that so I saw this and I was like, I have time. I have from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. I have got to talk with y'all about this.
He never deserved it. I understand this single moment will overshadow all of the others, but it's not representative of who I am, who Corey was, and his relationship with me and him.
To me, I think we got a view of what possibly happened to Corey when nobody else was looking, when nobody else was around, when he thought he could maybe get away with it. Like, that's, to me, in my just personal, I don't know, but just in my, from seeing this from the outside, because Corey seemed to be afraid of his dad. That is what that pediatrician saw. The one who she ended up crying on the stand. Her testimony was absolutely heartbreaking because they were trying to do what they could to get a child to get a because it's child abuse. They tried to get an assessment done. The doctor was out. It was Easter weekend, and I just This is tough.
I want to assure you that on April 2nd, I did nothing to cause Corey's passing. I didn't hurt my son. I loved him and I still do. I regret not bringing him to the hospital sooner. I didn't know how sick he was. I didn't know. I just thought he was tired. And whether you believe Dr. Bodden or Dr. Andrews' version of the events, the outcome is still the same. Corey is gone.
That's a weird thing to add, whether you believe the forensic pathologist or you believe my expert. How can you say these things? Like, this is, I don't think his lawyer saw this, or if his lawyer saw it, he might have provided some like, hey, I don't know that you want to say this. This. Mm, mm, mm.
He had so much to give this world, and he still can. What we do in his memory, for his memory, things that he would want us to do, that's all we have now. To the court staff, sheriff officers, to the jury, and to you, Your Honor, thank you for being professional through this whole process.
Yeah.
I understand you have a job to do today, Your Honor. Sentence me for the crimes I've been convicted of today. I ask that you please consider all of the evidence presented in and out of this courtroom when making your decision today. I ask you to sentence me fairly, taking into consideration my entire life, and not just based on the 12 days. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
And the sad thing is, I think, because I've heard some of the judge's statements, and we're going to listen to some of it. There are going to be some things said about his behavior. I'm going to skip past the prosecution. As you can imagine, the prosecution is sitting here like, he deserves the max. He deserves like, what he did is not okay. He ran to another states away, not just one state. There were multiple states between the incident and where he ran. And I've never heard somebody say like, don't judge me based on this one. Like, I've never heard somebody say that. I've never. Maddie Funk. This statement says, because he has no empathy, he does not believe anything he does to hurt others is hurtful. All of his reactions are rational to him. I agree. I think he might blame the victim. Like, he might blame, well, if Corey had just, or if Brianna had just brought him back on time, or it seems like he rationalizes his behavior. And I think that's problematic. I think that's very, very problematic. All right. So now, Corey's maternal grandfather. So Brianna's father is going to read a statement by Corey's aunt, Brianna's sister, who was not able to read. It's just the statement brings up too much for her. And so we are going to listen to this statement.
Would first like to speak, and he would like to actually read a letter from Corey's aunt, if he may approach.
Hi, sir. Sure. Come on up. Thank you. Just watch your step. And again, you can either provide us with your full name or just your initials.
Sure. Vito Micciolo.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Corey's grandfather. Thank you. My daughter has a letter that my youngest daughter that she it's too emotional to read, so I'm going to read it, and it's something that I believe in strongly in her words. Your Honor, I am Corey Micciolo's aunt. I am writing this victim impact letter and asking that you give Christopher the maximum sentence possible for the following reasons. To start off, I was very involved in Corey's life from the day he was born, as all of us were. Corey's death at the hands of Chris, a person that was supposed to love him, had left a hole in the hearts of all his family, including myself. I can assure you that Corey was always happy and loved child, up until the day Christopher entered his life. I was there the day Corey was dropped off by Christopher for the very first visit. I remember that Corey went to the room when he got home, and I noticed his lip was swollen.
Yeah.
Upon
First
asking
visit.
him what happened, he told me his father slapped him. This goes to show Chris's intentions from the very first visit.
From the very first visit. Wow. The very first visit. Poor boy.
Chris immediately chose to exert power, control, and violence to establish fear in Corey. Instead of showing love, caring, established respect between them. During Christopher's visitations, I was often given the painful job of being the one to give Corey to the DCP&P worker. Many times when he showed up, he would hide in the closet and beg not to go, to the point of having a panic attack. He would tell me how scared he was of his dad and to please not make him go. As much as I wanted to tell him he didn't have to go, I didn't have a choice in the matter. Sadly, this continued for the rest of Corey's life, very short life. This is the painful reality of what Corey and my entire family had to deal with every single time he was forced to see Christopher. I think it's only fair that Christopher has to finally face the consequences of his actions. The jury of his peers found him guilty, and I urge you to make him remain in prison for the maximum amount of time possible under the law. Corey didn't have a choice and wasn't shown any mercy. So either should Chris be given a choice of shown any mercy. I would go on and tell you stories. I could go on and tell you stories about the abuse Corey unfortunately had to endure. I truly hope you heard enough during the course of the trial and will render a significant sentence that forces Chris to understand the magnitude of his actions and deters others from abusing innocent children. Thank you for your time, Corey's aunt, Nicole Micciolo. And I just want to add that for me and the times I spent with Corey, how he was trained to not say anything because he knew the ramifications. He couldn't tell me that was happening. I wanted.
And that's what people that are harmful to children make them keep those secrets, which is very problematic. They say you better not tell, or if you tell, I'll do worse, or they use that power and intimidation to keep kids quiet. I've mentioned it in my video that talked about healing generational trauma, the parenting that heals generational trauma. The one thing my kid, so you've seen my kid interrupt while I'm on YouTube before, and he'll go to his school and he will say anything about what happens at home because we don't have anything to hide. Like he can say like he's safe, and he can tell his Gigi, he can tell anyone. When I was in graduate school, I will never forget, we were able to interview somebody that had dissociative identity disorder. It was one of our professor's clients who agreed to meet with the class for learning purposes. And he didn't do a therapy session. He just let the person come and share what they were prepared to share, and they answered a few of our questions. And somebody asked the question to this individual who was probably in their 50s or 60s that had suffered cult-like harm beginning in infancy. So severe trauma that resulted in dissociative identity disorder. The individual had, I think, over 40 different personalities that the professor had identified. And we were able to ask one of the alters what advice they would give to therapists. the person said, if something's wrong, don't tell one person, tell everybody. And that stayed with me, that when I'm working with kids, when I'm working with clients, if something's not okay, don't just tell one person, tell multiple people. And it was an advanced psychopathology class. It was one of the most interesting, probably one of the most complex cases I've ever seen. I have seen some budding severe dissociation in youth, and able to provide treatment, able to refer for care, and it was a really really interesting case, and so, poor Corey.
Wanted him to tell me because I wanted to try to address it. I did try to address it with DCPNP. I made the phone calls, but he was definitely afraid of this guy. And in my short amount of times interacting with Chris, he's definitely got a very bad anger streak in him and a hate streak in him. So, like I said, and like she said, please, you know, what he said is not true. He's a very hurtful person. He's very mean. And if he has a chance to do it again, he will do it again. So thank you, sir.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
I believe that Corey's grandmother would also like to address the court.
And you can either give us your full name or just your initials.
Rebecca Micciolo, Corey's GMA.
Thank you, ma'am.
Your Honor, I want to start by thanking you for allowing me to address you today. I will not stand here and tell you that I forgive this monster, because I don't, and I will never. You'll never hear those words come out of my mouth. The actions of this man have greatly affected my life, the lives of my 2 daughters, my 2 sons, and my granddaughter, and 19,000 others from around the world, including Corey's teachers and doctors. On April 2nd, 2021, this man lost control and he beat my grandson, and he denied him medical attention for several hours, only taking him to the hospital by car when Corey was within an hour of death, and leaving him to die with only a nurse and hospital staff around him, denying my daughter and myself to be with Corey, and denying Corey the comfort of having people who loved him with him as he took his last breath. This is not a man who should be shown mercy. My daughter slept in my bed many nights since Corey was murdered because she was afraid to be alone. We have nightmares. I see that treadmill video in my nightmares. That video that this monster sat in this courtroom and watched.
I loved Dr. G explains. He is an expert in body language. I am not an expert in body language. And he mentioned the fact that we did not see shame at all, or embarrassment, or, like, if nothing else, you saw anger as the video played. And I do not know this family, and that video and that's why I did not show it when I covered this case, because it is one of the most horrific things that I have ever seen. And the prosecutor mentions like the bite on the head. The judge later is going to talk about, this wasn't some like exercise, like, oh, like a parent, training their child for sports. No, this was vengeful, in my opinion. This was a vengeful, harmful, I don't even want to call it punishment, because it was just straight up abuse. It just was. Oh.
watched and didn't shed a tear, not 1 ounce of remorse. I'm being treated for several mental health disorders since Corey was murdered: PTSD, nightmare disorder, depression and anxiety. I'm on several medications to get through the day. I can't work. I'm no longer living, Your Honor. I'm existing. Your Honor, this man took advantage of a 16-year-old child when he was 21. He used alcohol and drugs, and Corey was conceived as a result.
She mentioned it. She brought it up that that Corey was not conceived consensually. That's what she's saying in this moment.
Corey was the dirty little secret that Chris never wanted anyone to know about. He demanded an abortion. He met Corey when he came home from the hospital. He knew Corey existed, but hid the truth from his family for years. None of the Gregors wanted Corey. David Gregor told me Corey should have been aborted. This man has a long history of alcohol abuse, 2 DUIs, drug abuse, domestic violence resulting in a restraining order, and child abuse that started long before he had visitations with Corey. He abused an ex-girlfriend's son while they were living in the Gregor home in Monroe Township. The DCPMP case was closed after the girl moved out of state. The system failed Corey, but Chris Gregor and his family also failed Corey. This man has never had to answer for any bad behavior. It seems it always went away somehow. Your Honor, my life will never be the same. Corey was wanted, loved, and doted upon by my family. We enjoyed watching and helping Brianna raise him. I have difficulty going into a store and seeing little boy clothes and toys that Corey would have loved. In September, when everyone is preparing their kids to go back to school, I wonder what backpack or shoes Corey would have chosen. I can't go to my nephew's house or my great nephew's birthday parties because seeing them makes me sad. Corey should be at those parties. I find myself looking at kids who are the age Corey would have been, and I wonder what Corey would look like now. I cry several times a day. My physical appearance has changed. My health has declined. I've aged. I'm angry, sad, bitter, and mostly I'm broken. This man has shown no remorse as he sat through the trial. I watched every second, and he didn't shed a tear for Corey. He's had discussions with fellow inmates about wanting Brianna to be killed. I'm sure he doesn't think we heard about that, but with social media, things do get out. This is not a man who can be rehabilitated. My family lives in fear, wondering if he will attempt to have my daughter killed, because we all know what he's capable of. My granddaughter visits her brother's grave and sits on the ground and plays with toys left there for Corey by strangers from all over the world. This makes me so sad. Watching Brianna watch her daughter play at Corey's resting place. And Corey wanted a baby sister so bad, and now she's here, but he's not. And Chris Gregor is the reason he isn't here. I often wonder what or how we will explain to my granddaughter that Corey isn't here. Do we tell her his father killed him so then she can wonder if that's what daddies do? Your Honor, Corey also wanted a father, but instead he got this monster who ridiculed him, deprived him of food, love.
Called him fat. Like, that's who does. And like, Corey was average. Like, he was not. Like, the fact that he did those things to a 6-year-old, that is
love, compassion, and beat him and abused him daily until his final beating on April 2nd, 2021. Your Honor, Corey knew he was going to die. On the Sunday prior to Corey's death, just 5 days before his death, Corey was at my house and preparing to take a bath. When he undressed, he was covered in bruises in various stages of healing. One stuck out because it was very large, and it was on the left side of his chest. I had to turn away so Corey didn't see the tears in my eyes. Once Corey was dressed, we sat in my bed. Corey looked at me and he said, "Hey, Gima, does God see what my daddy does to me?" I told him God sees everything. His voice got very low. He said, "Why doesn't he help me?" My heart was breaking as I told him that God was helping someone else who needed him more right now. Corey then asked why his daddy wasn't going to hell. And I replied, "He will someday." That same Sunday, Corey was outside writing with chalk on the sidewalk. Later in the day, Brianna and I noticed that Corey had written, "I died," near our front door. Corey's curiosity about God, heaven, and death grew prior to his death. On April 2nd, when Corey was getting ready to go back to Chris Gregor's house, I told him, "Take my cell phone and hide it and call when, not if, when his dad beats him." He said, "Gima, I can't." I told him to run to a neighbor, to which he replied, "I can't." His little face so serious. Corey knew nobody could help him. He knew he was going to die, and he accepted it. Your Honor, my conversation with Corey 5 days prior to his death and the day of his death will forever haunt me. My family was not allowed to be with Corey as he took his last breath because this man wouldn't tell us where Corey was. We weren't allowed to see Corey after he passed at the hospital because he was now evidence. My 6-year-old grandson was dead and now labeled evidence. This is what I have to live with every single day. Corey was taught in preschool by a lovely teacher, Kristen Oyen, that actions have consequences. Please teach this man that his actions have consequences. On May 1st, 2014, Corey Travis Micciolo was born. I was there holding Brianna's hand, and I was there to cut Corey's umbilical cord. When he was placed in my arms for that very first time, I whispered, "Hi, baby. I'm your grandma. I'll love you and protect you forever." Your Honor, I wasn't able to keep my promise to protect Corey, so I'm begging you to give Chris Gregor the harshest punishment possible today. Corey Travis Micciolo loved the solar system. He loved to draw. He loved his mommy and his family. He was smart and funny. He loved helping others. Corey wanted a daddy, but instead, he got this monster, Chris Gregor. Your Honor, please give Corey justice today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Ms. Lento.
Thank you, Judge. I believe that Corey's mother would also like to address the court.
So yes, this is the first time I've seen this one. And I know this one is probably going to be even tougher. As a mom, I can't imagine the pain. And losing a child is hard enough, but when you lose a child in a violent way, when it's in somebody that the child should feel safe with, it just adds additional trauma.
Hi, please come on up. Please watch your step.
I like her shirt.
Again, you can use your initials, your full name.
Brianna Micciolo.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
Your Honor, my name is Brianna Micciolo, and I appear before you today not only as a grieving mother, but also an advocate for justice. On behalf of my son, Corey, I stand here before you to plead for justice that Corey rightfully deserves and to press for the maximum sentence of Christopher Gregor, whose actions have inflicted irreparable harm in our lives. For you to fully understand the gravity of the situation, I will flash back to the July of 2013. This day marks the beginning of a traumatic journey defined by manipulation, abuse, and ultimately an unspeakable loss. At 16, I first met the defendant, who was 21 at the time. He proceeded to feed me drugs, alcohol, and took complete advantage of me, which led to the conception of Corey. From day one of my pregnancy, I knew I would keep Corey regardless of the way he was conceived. Corey didn't ask to be brought into this world, and I knew I owed it to him to bring him into this world with unconditional love. Corey was and still is my life, my world, and my everything. I would also like to speak about my past, which I am not 100% proud of. You heard a lot about it throughout the trial, and so did a lot of the world. It was very upsetting for that to come out because I've worked extremely hard for many years to be where I am today. I admit I abused drugs, but during the trial it was made out that for some reason my son deserved to be killed because his mom was a drug addict.
And that is not at all true. And it's my understanding that she was sober or was she was trying to work on sobriety. Often substance abuse, when there's been trauma, sometimes it can be a way to cope. And not an excuse. It just kind of helps me understand. And Christopher also admitted to using alcohol, cannabis, and also the nose powder as well. And so they painted her out to be a villain, and she is 0% responsible. She did everything she possibly could to fight for her son, and she hit barrier after barrier with the courts, with the system, with all those things. And so she is not responsible at all, in my opinion.
That is absolutely disgusting. I stand here today clean and sober, and I know Corey would be so proud of me. Unfortunately, my son is no longer here to tell his story, so I'm here to be his voice and tell his story along with all the others sitting in the gallery who have continued to stand by me. Not once have you seen the defendant shed a tear for Corey in the last 3.5 years since he killed him.
Himself.
And today was fake. I don't believe a word he said, and I don't accept any apologies. He has no remorse for any of the actions he committed. And his only remorse, like you saw today, was for himself because he got caught and convicted. Another reason I could think of is, everything he had done to Corey was done out of spite towards me. Another reason I could think of is he's sick in the head and used Corey as his punching bag. On April 2nd of 2021, it was not the first time that he abused Corey, but it was the last time. He never had an ounce of love for Corey. And to the defendant, Corey was just an inconvenience in his life. He never hugged him. He never praised him. He never told him he was proud of him or that he did a good job. He punished Corey every chance that he could get, and I cannot even begin to imagine what my son dealt with behind closed doors with this man. On April 2nd of 2021, I hesitantly dropped Corey off at the defendant's home, which is a mistake that will haunt me for the rest of my life. I kissed my son goodbye unknowingly for the last time. I wish I knew what was going to happen and I would never let him go. At 3 p.m. the same day, I received a phone call from the defendant where he stated Corey was very sick and he was taking him to the hospital.
and then hung up on me after he asked for my insurance card.
And wouldn't even tell her which hospital he was going to. He deprived her of her ability to even say goodbye. Like, he was controlling even that last little thing. Ugh.
As an extremely concerned mother, I called him back with no answer and continued to do so along with texts for hours to find out where Corey was and what was going on. For those few hours, my mother and I called every hospital in the area with no luck. The very last hospital finally said he was there. Then there was a knock on the door. It was our local police there to tell me Corey had passed away. My healthy 6-year-old boy who was just alive and well with me a few hours ago is dead. My heart dropped and my whole body collapsed from the shock that took over my whole body. I was unable to breathe. My mind was racing, and I felt like I was no longer inside my body. All I remember is screaming that they had the wrong child because Corey was fine this morning. I actually convinced myself that it wasn't him and they had the wrong kid for a while. My next question was, where is Chris? I needed to know what happened, and he was nowhere to be found until the next day when I found out he was in Tennessee. No one was able to tell me what happened to Corey except Corey died at the hospital. I couldn't even see my son until a week later at his funeral because his body was evidence. But the defendant took away my chance to say goodbye to Corey while he was passing away. Exactly. And not once did he pick up the phone he was using to converse with many of his girlfriends, to call 911, to seek medical attention, which could have potentially saved Corey's life. Instead, he allowed Corey to suffer silently for hours. Once he realized how bad it was, he threw him in the car and then proceeded to drive 15 minutes to the hospital. He slowly walked Corey into the hospital with no sense of urgency, even when he knew how bad his condition was. I fully believe that if we took Corey to the hospital as soon as he received the lethal blow, he could still be here today. There are many steps he could have taken to save my son's life.
But then Corey could have said, because Christopher was aware that she had taken him for a child abuse, or that she had taken him to the hospital, and that the hospital was aware of his injuries and everything. And so there's a part of me that's like, did he, but I don't know. So I don't know. But it was like, because he tried to call CPS on August 2nd to say that she had done something to Corey. And he was concerned about Corey. And this is, I watched too much true crime.
Life. Instead, he sat home and let Corey slowly die for hours. Every day since April 2nd has been an absolute living nightmare, and it is now the new reality for me to replay Corey's horrific death repeatedly in my head. It's the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, and the last thing I think about before I fall asleep at night. I dread normal conversation with people because I always get asked, how many kids do you have? I say 2, and they follow up asking how old are they. That's when the grief sinks in, and I have to tell them my 6-year-old was killed by his father. It is such an indescribable feeling when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. A sense of guilt was all I could feel. I wanted more kids, but how do I love another child? Is it fair to Corey? That is all I could think about. Now I know this is not true, and I love my daughter with all my heart, but I always will feel an emptiness, no matter how many children I have. My new reality is explaining to my daughter what happened to her big brother and why is he not here. I live in fear every day, every second of the day, that something will happen to my daughter, and I will lose her too. It's a horrible feeling, and it causes me such bad anxiety. I take her to the cemetery to see Corey every weekend. And at 1.5 years old, she knows where Corey is, buried. It is every week. It is heartbreaking. She sits and plays with the cars and toys we left there for him. I live in a nightmare, and I would never wish this feeling or how I must live on my worst enemy. Throughout everything he did to Corey, Corey still loved him.
Oh, man.
He looked up to you. And he still wanted to be, I'm sorry. And he still wanted him to be like a real father who treated him like a son. Instead of being a good role model for Corey, he decided to beat him to death. Why? Were you jealous of him?
I think he was.
Did you hate me so much that you took it out on Corey?
I think he did. My personal.
Were you abused as a child? Not that that's a good excuse, because you could have overcome it and became the protector he needed as a child, but instead you became a killer. There was no amount of love in his actions and only a disturbing amount of hate. It seems like he hated Corey simply because I loved him, and he felt deprived of that love. He couldn't even control himself for long because after the first visit with my son, he started abusing him. My son didn't even know him, and he was beating him. He was abusing him from the first time. I thank God. I hate you for not letting me say goodbye to my son, but I thank God your face is not the last one he saw.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What this monster did was pathetic, disgusting, and I wish him nothing but the worst. One could only hope that karma comes to him quickly. After all he's done, you would hope he'd admit what he's done, but no. Instead of grieving, I had to fight for justice for 3 long years. Go to trial just to relive everything. I had to see that video that I never wanted to see. I didn't have to see it until 2 weeks before this trial. I went 3 years without seeing it. Oh, I'm sorry.
You have to apologize.
Just for you to be found guilty anyway. What was the point of that? Just to make it worse for us? Are you that crazy that you convinced yourself you didn't do this? I hate you. I will never forgive you. And I'm going to skip that one. You have stolen my full potential at happiness. And I will never have my son back. My family will never feel whole again. My daughter will never get to meet her brother. And my boyfriend will never get to be the father that the defendant should have been to our son. He took my whole world away from me. He has shown and proven to be that special kind of dirtbag he claimed I was. Your Honor, all this monster had to do was say he did not want to be a father. No one would have made him. I would have happily continued to raise my son alone with the help of my family. He had many opportunities not to do this to him. He is in this current situation due to his own actions, and every day he will have to live with this. He deserves nothing less than to experience the pain, suffering, and isolation that he inflicted on Corey. I hope that every moment he spends in prison is haunted by the torment of knowing he killed my child. I fear when Christopher Gregor gets out of jail, whenever that is, he will come after my family and I again. I fear for our lives. His twisted mind truly thinks that I caused all this and that he's in jail because of me, even though he's here because he killed him. I truly believe if he ever gets out and gets the opportunity, he will kill me. Your Honor, Corey should be going into 5th grade in September, hanging out with his friends, playing sports and enjoying his life. Instead, he will never experience finding his first girlfriend, graduating high school, falling in love, driving a car, getting married, or having kids. Christopher robbed him of his entire future, and Corey could have easily lived until he was 80 years old. He stole over 70 years from Corey and thousands of memories he could have made. I will never see my son again. I miss him and I love him so much. There are countless reasons Christopher deserves the maximum sentence. He rejected what I considered a generous plea deal, which shows how selfish and ignorant he is as a person. I beg you to not allow this injustice to continue, and he must face the full consequences of his actions. Thank you for allowing me to speak, Your Honor.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am.
All right. So the judge is going to go through why he can't give the full why for like, so if you want to go back and watch the full thing, I do want to let these pictures play, because my heart truly breaks for the family. I've seen what the sentence is in the description, and not in the description, in the chat, and I think the judge was trying to make sure that the sentence wasn't overturned on appeal. I think that is what the judge was trying to protect. I have 10 minutes, so I'm gonna have to put the judge on maybe 1.25, make him a little bit faster, and let's see how much of this we can get to.
A new offense. Based upon the defendant's disorderly persons offense record. Based upon the defendant's attempt to influence his mother's testimony, which caused the defense counsel to then forego calling his mother as a witness. His mother had testified at pretrial hearings before this court outside the presence of the jury. After one of those hearings, defendant, speaking to his mother on a recorded line from the Ocean County Jail, engaged in attempts which the state portrayed as attempting to influence or tamper with her testimony. The parties came in the next day outside the presence of the jury, or the next court day, and brought that to my attention, submitted a transcript to me, and the parties also indicated that the actual recording is worse than a reading of the cold transcript. I'm permitted to consider that because that was evidence on this record, and shows someone who, even in the course of the trial, with extremely effective and experienced criminal defense counsel, was still trying to undermine the criminal justice process. I'm also permitted to consider defendant's attempts to flee the jurisdiction after Corey's death on April 2nd, 2021. He did not simply leave the hospital and drive to, say, a relative's house or some other location close by. Defendant drove all the way to Arkansas. I don't know, and I didn't allow an answer to the question of whether or not he was on the way to Mexico, because that would have been speculation, but he was, by Detective Sergeant Raymond Cole's testimony, 45 minutes from the Texas border. Never once in this case has anyone submitted there were any relatives in Texas or in Arkansas, but the behavior was, in an understatement, peculiar at least. This was not a defendant that left and went a few miles away. It's true the defendant did turn around at some point. His father testified at his father's urging to come back, likely because it made him look guilty, and it certainly did make him look guilty.
Yeah.
I'm also entitled to consider, as aggravating factor 3, that the defendant committed these two separate acts on separate dates, that the treadmill video shows a callous display of the defendant towards Corey.
Yes.
In addition, despite a long prison sentence, the defendant can still commit new crimes while incarcerated. Someone who's violent, who lacks impulse control, who's motivated by anger, can reoffend while in a correctional setting against corrections officers, civilian correction staff, medical staff, or other inmates. Particularly if another...
So, Dominique, I have to interrupt the judge on this. So, Corey was dying, and Christopher got in his car and drove off and drove to Arkansas. He was likely headed out of the country. Likely. Nobody knows for sure, but he fled multiple states. And the nursing staff were the ones that were there holding Corey's hand and there with him as he passed. His father was not there. The grandfather, so Christopher's father, like, told him don't go. Christopher's mother was begging him to stay. And so he was in New Jersey, and they found him in Arkansas. Okay. So problematic.
Person is vulnerable, incapable of resistance. But it's worth describing some other aspects of the treadmill video. We will, of course, focus on Corey's repeated falls on the video, what can be really described as the child being ejected off the video, almost like on a conveyor belt. And I remember the reaction from the jurors when they first saw it. They sucked in their breath when they saw that. And then you see Corey getting back on and it happening again and again. In fact, even before the first fall, you see this young man get on a treadmill and run like he's a champion. I can't imagine a 6-year-old who was able to do that. I was so surprised by that. He obviously knows how to use that treadmill. And then he's doing a great job for several.
A lot of people speculate that wasn't the first time that he had put him on that treadmill.
Several minutes while his father is working out in the gym, doing various exercises. And then his father comes over and starts to increase the speed and perhaps the incline. And Corey tries to keep up. And you keep, when you're looking, you keep hoping that, okay, it's only going to be for a short sprint, but it just keeps going. And you see on the tread, Corey falling further and further behind. Defendant doesn't walk around behind him to grab him. And you see finally he can't keep up. And then to everyone's horror, you see what happens as it goes on 5 more times. Mr. Gallucci described that to the jury in his opening statement as horrifying, told the jury they were going to find it horrifying. And that was obviously strategic to try and minimize the impact of it. But because it is so horrifying, what do we kind of discount in the rest of that video? It's actually 4 separate videos, but the totality of the circumstances from when Corey arrives at the apartment complex and goes into the gym with his father till he leaves. You see Corey being brought into the parking lot by his mother and getting out of the car. You see the defendant approach the car. There is no loving interaction between Mr. Gregor and Corey. Yeah. There's none of the kindness you would expect to see from a father who claims to have left Baltimore, given up his career to come home to New Jersey and be a father. There's no little pat on the back, no hug, no high five to Corey. Corey goes right in and they say.
So Christopher did not come into Corey's life until Brianna. So the state of New Jersey, you have to file the father, and they have to have the father paying child support if the child receives Medicaid. So Brianna was just trying to get medical insurance for her son. And so that's when Christopher was going to have to pay child support. So there's a lot of speculation that he only came into Corey's life to avoid having to pay more child support because Brianna would have full custody. With having 50-50, or like him having most of the custody and her just having visitation, that minimized the financial toll, like him having to pay more. That's the speculation.
State alleges that defendant puts up 2 fingers to say you're 2 hours late and that's your punishment. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but there is a shot of him holding up 2 fingers. And then after Corey falls repeatedly and then they walk out, there's no loving interaction. There's no pat on the back. Good job, son. There's no hug. Are you okay, son? There's nothing. In fact, the defendant walks out and Corey is trailing behind him, having to grab the door himself. And I'm not denigrating Corey when I say that, but he's being treated by the defendant like he's the stray dog following along. So while I respect the character letters I received saying what a loving father he is, a picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 10,000 words. Exactly. So whatever happened that day, Corey was not receiving love or companionship or kindness or support. He wasn't even receiving what could be described as a tough father who's going to raise him to be a man. Get back on the bike when you fell off. That was abuse of the most egregious sort. Yeah. And it doesn't square with the defendant's statements today. Now, to say that, however, I'm not suggesting that Corey was mistreated at his grandparents' home in Monroe. There's nothing to indicate to me that what happened at his grandparents' home was anything other than appropriate. His mother and father testified, both the mother outside the presence of the jury, the father inside the presence of the jury. Although I don't want to get into all the social media attention, I would say that both sides, Corey's mom's side and defendant's parents, have a right to closure in this matter. And this venom back and forth should not be directed by either side. The individual responsible for Corey's death and for Corey's endangerment stands before the court today in a green and white jumpsuit, and the focus should be on him. Based upon all that, I find aggravating factor 3 is present, and I give it moderate weight. I say moderate weight because of the lack of a serious record. But let's talk about that record for a minute. The pre-sentence report confirms that this marijuana offense, again, it's not an egregious offense. In fact, the under 50 grams is no longer a crime or offense in New Jersey. The drug paraphernalia, which the defendant pled guilty to, is a disorderly person's offense still in New Jersey, so I'm allowed to consider it. It has a February 2020 date of violation, and just a week or so later, the imposition of a fine. But why is that date so significant in 2020? Because this is the man that returned from Baltimore in 2019 to come back and take care of his child, to give up his career, to be a great dad. We didn't have to do that. He could have said, listen, I relocated. I didn't know I had Corey. I'll pay child support. But he's portrayed by himself and his family as being this unselfish, altruistic person that gave up a career with urban teachers, that left a position where he obtained what appears to be an extraordinary education, a master's degree in special education with a secondary degree in mathematics at what is by all accounts
Okay, so you all know I am a full-time, I'm a therapist. This is what I do. I have to go. I do believe the judge sentenced him to 25 years. I'm very close to, so where I got to had about 24, 25 minutes left, but the judge sentenced him to 25 years with time served and 5 years probation after that. Thank you, Allison, for providing that. 25 consecutive. Thank you. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate you all so much. You all are the best. And thank you for the super chat. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. My heart goes out to the Micciolo family. And I just truly wish them all the best as they heal. I hope that this closure, I hope that they can start to find some closure, but that's on them, their healing journey. And I hope that they have some very good professionals that are around them on the way. Thank you all again. I'll see y'all on Tuesday for my birthday stream. Y'all have a good one. Bye.